Welcome, writers, readers, and friends to the Authors Talking Bookish podcast. I'm Donna Norman Carbone, author of All That Is Sacred.
And I'm Hope Gibbs, author of Where the Grass Grows Blue.
We're two debut writers traditionally published by a small publishing house, bringing to you all the experiences that we as authors learn the hard way, so you don't have to.
We'll give you insights from the inception of a book idea to publication and beyond. And along the way, we'll share our love of books from the writer's perspective.
Welcome back, friends. How are you today? Today is the 77th episode of Authors Talking Bookish, and today we are fortunate enough to have women's fiction turned thriller author Maggie Giles with us. And we cannot wait to bring her on and get into all the things. I am Donna Carbone, and this is Hope Gibbs. Hi, Hope. How are you today?
I am great. How are you, Donna?
I am well. It's the middle of summer, and I'm enjoying it. How about you?
Middle of summer, and it's very hot down here in Tennessee, but I love the summer. It's it's daylight longer. I'm enjoying sunsets on my front porch now. So yeah.
Yeah. Last time we talked, you and I were both kind of in the throes of chaos. Have things calmed down a little bit?
Things have calmed down a little bit. I had a little surgery earlier in the summer, and I'm feeling more like myself. And I'm now settled into my new house, and I am back to what I love to do. I am back to writing, and I am almost getting ready to do something with that second book.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it.
Well, I am excited about this podcast today because one of my favorite parts about this podcast that we've started was when we started interviewing authors. And we're in for a great treat. I cannot wait to talk to Maggie about her experiences. She's written 4 books, but what I love about her story is that she has switched genres. And as a writer, I want to know all about that. So why don't we bring her on?
Yeah.
Hello, Maggie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We usually start off with your bio before we dig into some of the questions. So are you ready for that?
Sounds great.
Okay. Maggie Giles is a Canadian author who writes suspenseful women's fiction and thrillers. Her debut novel, The Things We Lost, was named a 2023 Distinguished Favorite in Women's Fiction by the Independent Press Awards. Maggie is a member of the International Thriller Writers and currently works in marketing. She dove into writing a novel headfirst, despite having aphantasia, a condition where one lacks a visual imagination. Maggie lives in Ontario with her Mastiff mix, Jolene, and spends most of her days enjoying the outdoors, from swimming to hiking to skiing in the winter. She is the author of the Twisted Truth series, and her 4th book, The Art of Murder, came out in June 2025. Let's welcome Maggie. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Good. You have quite a resume you've built there.
It's been a process.
Yeah. And the 3 of us all debuted the same time.
Yep.
So I think it's so interesting to see how your career has blossomed and also like taken a little bit of a shift.
A little bit. Yeah. I kind of went in another direction.
Yeah. So I read that you began your writing. Is it true that was after a backpacking experience through Europe?
Yeah. So when I was in my early 20s, my best girlfriend and I backpacked Europe for about 2.5 months. And about 3 weeks into the trip, we ran out of books to read. So I had written all through our high school, knowing each other. So she had encouraged me to write a historical fiction because we were going around all these castles in Europe. So that actually ended up being the first full-length, I guess, original novel I wrote, even though it is based off Anne Boleyn, so it's not super original. But it was sort of a very fun experience. And it really wasn't until after that trip I spoke to a historical author and I went, oh, like, could I get a book published?
Yeah. Wow, Anne Boleyn, I would like to read that manuscript. I'm all about King Henry. I teach Brit Lit, and so that's something that I teach every year. In fact, our summer reading is The Other Boleyn Girl this year.
Oh, nice.
So,
I'm a little against that one just because it doesn't frame Anne very well, and I'm a big Anne fan.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm an Anne fan as well, but I do like Philippa Gregory.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about when you first published. You published The Things We Lost, which was women's fiction, and I read that book. It was fabulous. It was like a sliding doors kind of book. Like, what if something else happened? How would your life turn out differently? How did you move from that into thriller writing? You say that it's easier to kill characters than to make them fall in love.
Yes, you don't need chemistry to kill somebody. I think what it was is that I've always really been a big thriller fan. Mary Higgins Clark was someone I read a lot when I was growing up. And I was just always so fascinated by the darker side of humans and the decisions people make in, very difficult circumstances. So my debut novel was definitely a women's fiction, but it does lean a little bit more suspense. It was actually the 7th book I had written before publication. So I had been with WFWA, which is where I met you guys, and had been sort of leaning into that women's fiction, but still sort of keeping my suspense side of things alive. So when it came to looking at what my second book would be, I had a few books written already that were kind of leaning thriller. So my publisher picked up Twisted when I kind of described it to her, and I was like, okay, great. Think we're going to lean, more heavily into the thriller side of things, because I really do have, a lineup of like 5 thriller books I've written versus like maybe 2 or 3 women's fiction ones that I have. So it just felt like sort of a natural ease for me to move into it. And as I said, I cannot seem to write a book without somebody dying.
Well, I love that the things that you lost your debut. It earned a book list star review, and it was also selected by Barnes and Noble as top indie favorite in like 2023. What was that like, especially because it was your debut?
It was totally surprising. So a lot of people don't know, but I actually debuted with my publisher as their debut as well. So it's a very sort of thing you're not supposed to do. But I just really, really fell in love with the publishers at Rising Action. We had such a great phone call that it ended up being this like great experience that I'm like, I'm just going to trust my gut and go with it. And we were all very shocked to get the book list review, to get the award. I was actually at an event where I'd had a few alcoholic beverages when my publisher texted me and was like, I need to call you. And I'm like, okay, to tell me about this award. So it was very exciting. And it's just so surreal. Like, I've had 3 books published since. It's not something that I've gotten with them. So it was sort of almost like a fluke, but like a very exciting fluke. It's, as I'm sure you guys know with the industry, it just takes the right person reading it. So I was lucky in both those situations that the person who happened to pick up my book was excited about it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a great story. And I just want to ask a question real quick. So you said you had written 7 books, and then this was the 7th book, and it got published with a brand new publisher. What was your road to publication like? Like, how long had you queried? What was it like between that first book the manuscript that you wrote, to actually being a published author?
So it was years. I will say I was not an English student. I was a math and science student. I just really like to tell stories. So when it came to writing a book, I did not know how to write one. Just for context, that Anne Boleyn book that you want to read, I will say it's in much better shape now. When I first finished it, it was 170,000 words.
Oh,
I can relate to that. I'm an overwriter too.
And it was honestly because I did not know how to write a book. So I started finding at the beginning of every chapter, I was pretty much summing up what had happened in the previous chapter before moving into the new one. And it really was an interesting experience when I finally did sit down and actually kind of learn to write. So I will say I wrote for about 10 years before I published. Now, a lot of those years were spent learning. A lot of those years were querying far too early. And I really just sort of was finally in a groove with the 7th book. I felt good about it. I felt like I was in a good place. I had an agent phone call, and that ended up not working out, which I'm grateful for because I think it wasn't as legit as I thought it was, as we know in this industry. And then I sort of stumbled upon Rising Action, and I blind queried them. At the time, it was sort of, I'm sure you guys know that querying burnout, that I wasn't looking into anything. I didn't think twice. I'm like, they want this book, I'm just going to send it to them. So when they asked for the phone call, I was like, who are these people? And I went and looked them up and was like, oh my gosh, they are a brand new publisher. And like, that's not what we do. We don't sign with someone brand new because we just don't know if there's a track record there. We just don't know how long it'll last. We don't know what it means for the book. So my partner, him and I were talking, and he's like, oh, that's so exciting. Let's call it the publisher. I'm like, yeah, I'm not signing a contract. And he's like, okay, well, like, why are you taking the call? I'm like, well, it's good practice. Like, I'll get to talk to some publishers. I'll get to hear what they say. I'll get to ask some questions. It's kind of like having an interview for practice. So it was good. And I had an hour-long phone call with them. And after the phone call, my partner goes, so how'd it go? And I was like, I think I'm signing a contract. And he's like, what happened in the last hour? I'm like, a lot. So it just ended up being like a very, we were very fluid. They were very passionate about the book. And I kind of went into this being like, this is my 7th novel. If this completely crashes and burns, I have more books. So I think that's sort of why I was a little more open to kind of take the shot, because I've been with this book for so long. They've so said it. Let's see what happens.
Wow. That's awesome. Are you still with Rising Action?
Thank you. So I've done my last 3 books with them as well. So I've done 4 books total.
Yeah. And so do you think you will remain agentless and kind of in charge of your own writing career? Is that something that you plan on maintaining?
I think that's sort of something that I'm open to sort of seeing what's next. I'm always sort of talking to industry people. It's a very interesting experience trying to query when you've been published, or just even talking to other people about their agents after being published. I found it just opened up a lot of different doors. So I am working on a 5th. I am working with an editor on the 5th. So it is in progress. What I do with it after we're done, I'm not totally sure.
Yeah. Well, is the editor provided to you by Rising Action, or is that something that you hire on your own?
So for my 4 books I've done, yes, it was all through Rising Action. This one I'm working on, I'm doing it separate.
Okay, well, let's talk about your book. So you had the Things We Lost, which was women's fiction with a little suspense to it. But then you completely went suspense. You did Twisted, you did Wicked, and those are 2 together. And then The Art of the Murder. So was it, I was going to ask you how your publisher felt about it, but they were fine with you switching genres. So talk about going from women's fiction to thrillers.
Yeah, so I think because my women's fiction does have a little bit of the suspense in it, it did feel like a natural move to move into thriller. I have some additional women's fiction, but they're a little less suspenseful, less thriller-esque. So I think it just, when I was looking at what is a long-term career pick for me, thrillers have always been something I flock to. So I think that's sort of why I was like, if we're looking for our next book, here's 3 that I'm working on. And my publisher went, we want Twisted. And I was like, okay, great. So I'm working on a sequel. She's like, well, is the sequel done? I'm like, no. And she's like, okay, well, we'll maybe consider the sequel, but for now we'll take the first one. So I had to write the second book with no promise of it being picked up. Thankfully it was.
Oh, that's cool. I have heard you in other interviews talk about the aphantasia that I mentioned in the bio. Can you tell our listeners about that? Because I just find it fascinating that you're a writer and you have that. And it was something I'd never heard of before I heard you talk about it.
It was an interesting thing to discover. I probably didn't discover it until maybe about 7 or so years ago at this point. It was actually in conversation with a graphic designer and a web developer that I used to work with. And this web developer was asking this designer if he just sort of saw these things in his head. And I kind of tuned into this conversation and I'm like, I'm sorry, what do you mean you see your entire design in your head? He goes, oh, well, yeah, like I picture this. And I'm like sitting there being like, I don't get it. Like, I just thought you just draw. And the web developer goes, you don't see pictures in your head, do you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I don't either. Like, this is an actual thing. And I'm like, oh, so I actually went home and started researching it. And that's where I sort of found out that aphantasia was this thing. So basically, aphantasia means that you do not have a mind's eye. You basically don't have a visual imagination. So when you're told to meditate and picture things, I actually can't do that. I just don't see anything. It's just black up there. There's nothing visual. So for me to sort of write description, which was always my toughest part of writing, because as a reader, I just didn't need it. It was always something that I had to rely on my early readers for them to be like, we need to see this. We don't know what we're looking at. What does this person look like? And I'm like, okay, like good to know. So it's something I've learned to work with. One of the funniest things I find, and maybe it's not funny, haha, but more ironic. The Art of Murder opens with a fairly gruesome death scene. And to me, doesn't bother me. I've had some very visual readers tell me they couldn't get past the first couple pages because of how descriptive it is. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm really glad I can't see that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about that book, The Art of the Murder. I love it. It was because friendship, betrayal, twisted choices. This book cracked open my cozy small town dreams and stuffed it full of secret lies and murder. I found that on Amazon. So tell us a little bit about that book.
So I live in a very quaint small town that when you're walking home at 1 a.m. after going to one of the only 2 bars that are open past 11, there's nobody on the street. Like, you might run into some raccoons, but there's no cars. There's maybe 1 or 2 other people walking home from the bar. But in my early years of living here, I'm walking home and I'm like, this is crazy how few people are around. And it's small town. You're not walking far. You don't overly feel uncomfortable. It's that, sense of safe small town. And it just got me thinking, like, this would be the perfect place to get away with murder because nobody is around to see it. Now, it is very touristy. It's been built up a little bit more wealthy. It's a lot harder to get away with murder with house cameras now. But at the time, this was sort of before the COVID boom. So it was still early in people moving to the area. So it was just it just felt like a perfect setting. So I started actually writing this book itself back in high school as a really terribly written YA novel. And I decided to revive the idea as an adult thriller set in my small town. So I had to change some things because obviously when you're writing it as a 16-year-old and they're 16, they make some very questionable teenage choices. And when you age them up to late 20s, early 30s, you kind of have to mature them a bit. So that's sort of where it stemmed from. And it did kind of turn into this idea of people love these small towns and how safe they feel. So what happens when your small town stops feeling safe and you start to wonder if it's the person you know and love the best involved?
Love that concept.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit to your writing life. So I read that you have a full-time marketing job.
I do.
You also write, but you have to have a life outside of the desk, so to speak. So why don't you walk us through a typical day of your writing life, you as a writer and you as an author? Because I have learned that my writing life was very different before I was a published author, because when you're an author, you have all kinds of other responsibilities. So tell us give us a little insight into your life.
So I will say I have gone on a little bit of a creative hiatus this year. So last year I actually released 2 books back to back in about a month apart. And they re-released Twisted, I think, a month before that. And basically the reason for that was because Rising Action signed a distribution deal with Simon & Schuster. So it was very exciting. Wow. We got much more, many more eyes on our books thanks to their distribution network. But because of that, they took over publication of the books. So Twisted had to be republished as the first book in a series. And then Wicked had to come out after that. And then we already had The Art of Murder on schedule. So I sort of went April, May, June, and I had a book come out each day last year. So it was nonstop. So by the time sort of fall rolled around and I was done all my interviews and my library visits, I went, I'm not doing anything. So the last few months have been very focused on just sort of working on my manuscript that I'm working on right now, doing my day job, having my social life. But when I was really in it, it was a lot of sort of scheduling around podcasts, meetings, launch parties, community stuff. And a big thing I talk about a lot when it comes to writing is finding your community. I know that's something you guys totally relate to with WFWA. But with getting published, it really opened up my local community. So a lot more Ontario-based authors that I've been able to connect with. And it just makes such a big difference to the routine. I always find that, the social battery is drained and I'm like, I don't want to go to this writing event. But as soon as I'm there and you're there with other writers, that social battery doesn't really exist anymore because you all just get the same thing. So I hate to say it. I don't really have a great routine. I'm super chaotic. The one thing that really works in my favor with my life is I do work full-time from home. So I don't have that commute in the morning, which makes a big deal, and the commute at the end of the day. When I was living in the city, it was like an hour beginning of the day and an hour at the end of the day going into the office and out, which now is not the case. So I have my mornings to do what I need to do. I have my evenings to do what I need to do. And then I also preface this and say, I do not have any children. My only child is my dog, and she is very chill as long as I take her for one walk a day.
How do you think your role as a marketer plays into how you've created your brand? You probably don't know this, but when I first signed my contract, we have author mentors and that were assigned from our publisher. And I didn't know how to do anything. And so she said, choose a few authors to kind of follow and model. And you were one of those authors for me.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, what your social media, what is your relationship with social media and how much of that was influenced by your day job?
So I am pretty outgoing person. And I do really like attention. So social media was great for me because that is something that I could be very obnoxious on and get the attention I so craved. Now, I will say when it turned into you have to promote yourself, it's not like a want anymore. It did definitely get harder. Having the marketing background helped, I think, because on the days that even where I was really burnt out, which I know you guys know from the creative burnout, it's such a real thing in this industry. And even the social posting, I remember my partner being like, why are you being so dramatic over a social media post? And I'm like, because I have to do it. And it doesn't feel authentic and I don't want to do it, but I have to for my brand. So it was an interesting shift. And I do think having that background in marketing where I was already doing social media for WFWA. I was doing marketing for my company, which is a completely non-creative industry. And it sort of just helped me figure out how to get around that burnout and sort of apply more of the actual marketing tactics to the social rather than it just feel like I'm shouting in the void. And then authenticity. I really sort of draw on that a lot. Don't get me wrong. Social media is always a little bit of faking it until you make it. But I really think the person I put out on social is very much who I am for the most part, maybe a little more polished. So I think that's sort of where I really try to aim. I think the reality is that I wrote these books and people are going to meet me and it's happened a lot. People meet me and then they are like, why do you write so dark? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm great. They're like, you're so happy. And I'm like, yeah, because it all goes in there.
Yeah, I love that. So when Donna and I started this podcast, we were both debut writers and we really had to learn a lot of things the hard way. So that's even our tagline, all the things we learn the hard way so you don't have to. What is something either in writing or marketing or publishing that you've learned the hard way?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, just the writing process for sure. I think, I spent a lot of time pantsing, which I know a lot of us do in the industry. And ever since I started with the actual publisher and I've learned how to plot, and don't get me wrong, I still allow myself a little bit of freedom, creative freedom and some pantsing, but the plotting just made such a difference when it came to the editing process. Like I would get a pants novel and then all of a sudden I'm sitting there being like, how do I make this work? Like I literally went on 3 different tangents and now nothing makes sense. And now my novel needs so much editing, and it always does. First drafts are always bad. I tell that to everyone who is very set on getting their first draft to be perfect. Please don't. It's always bad. You're always going to change stuff. But I think when I did the plotting side of things and I just had a much better understanding, it made the editing process, the after process, so much easier. Whereas early, like I say this, how the Things We Lost was my 7th book. I have probably 3 or 4 books that have never made it past the first draft stage because I look at them and I go, I don't know what to do with this.
Well, we have time for one more question because we've got our quick fire to come. Donna, give us one more question.
One more question. After a reader finishes one of your books, what do you most hope they take away emotionally?
Not the desire to murder people. I hope it makes them question things. I think that's the biggest thing I've gotten with The Art of Murder is it's morally complex. So yes, the individual who is committing the terrible acts is doing a terrible thing, but she's doing them for a reason that she believes is correct. And I did have readers come away being like, I didn't disagree with her, and I'm a little concerned about myself now.
Oh, wow. That is really interesting. I love that. Well, you have been awesome to talk to. So we want to get to know you a little bit more personally. So we started this little thing called our rapid fire questions, and it's really simple. And so just, it's not deep thought. So Donna, why don't you start us out?
Sure. When do you prefer writing, morning or evening or afternoon?
Evening.
Yeah.
Evening. Yeah. I like it. I'm an evening writer too. Okay. So what is your all-time favorite book?
The Phantom Toll Booth. It's my childhood favorite book. Oh. And I read it to this day and I love it.
Isn't it funny how we find books that, especially attached to our childhood, that we reread and reread? It's a comfort thing. What's your favorite book genre to read?
Thrillers, always. Yes. But I do get thriller burnout, so I do try to mix it up.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Do you prefer writing in a quiet room or do you like background noise?
So my partner is a big sports guy and I am often expected to be on the couch. So I often write with sports on in the background.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
It's all good. Honestly, sports are probably easy because I don't really listen and I just am like, I just hear him yell. So usually I'm like, oh God, what happened?
That can help with your thrillers. Yeah.
Yeah. Insert jump scare here. Do you have a go-to snack while writing?
Not usually. I'm usually just water, coffee. I can't do sticky hands on keyboards.
That's funny because that's the next one. I was going to ask you coffee, tea, or something else to drink while writing.
Coffee or water for sure. Sometimes wine if it's, appropriate.
Okay. Your most recent book, if it was made into an adaptation, who would you like to star in it?
Ooh, that's interesting. 30s. I'm trying to think. Like, I would love it if Amanda Seyfried was Alexa, but she might be a little bit too older for it now that she's in her 40s, but she can play young.
Yeah.
I would have said like Jessica Chastain for Courtney, but again, I think might be a little bit older because Courtney's in her late 20s, but again, I think we could probably do it. I haven't really cast my guys, but I think for those main two, like I'm looking for like the blonde best friend and the redhead best friend. And I think that would be, it would be fun to see. I've always liked the idea of somebody casting it to see how people interpret my characters.
I love that.
Yeah, that is fun.
So last question, what is your favorite character from one of your 4 books?
Oh, that's hard. I love Courtney. I know a lot of people don't love her. I love her because she is like heavily based off my best friend who inspired me to write, the one who I backpacked with. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick my detective from Twisted and Wicked. His name's Ryan Boone. He makes horrible bad dad jokes, and I think I wrote him as wish fulfillment. So yeah, I would probably say Detective Ryan Boone.
Well, Maggie, you have been delightful. You have given us some great insight, and those who are watching on YouTube, I put up all 4 of her books, and I got to say, I love the cover of Twisted and Wicked. Kudos to either you, your publisher, whoever came up with the graphic designer. But we know our audience, they're going to want to follow you. Where can they find you on social media, website, etc.?
Yeah, so my website is just maggiegiles.com. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. Both Instagram and TikTok are Maggie Giles _. I am more often on Instagram of all the platforms, but you can find me anywhere.
Well, that is wonderful. Again, you have been wonderful. Donna, can you give us a little insight into our next episode?
Sure. Our next 2 episodes, actually, we have a 2-part series. We're going to talk about the emotional arc of a writer, from first idea to after the publication of your first novel.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. We've never done a 2-part series, so
we have not.
Going to be fun. And everyone, you guys can find us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, and on Instagram, or go to our website, authorstalkingbookish.com. And again, Maggie, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
It was a pleasure.
Yes. And until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hope Gibbs.
And I'm Donna Norman Carbone. It's time for you to get to work.
We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks with another tip from your author friends.